Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I feel like I came in a little bit hot there. It is Friday night in the United States, October 14th. We're here to do part two of our beautiful, glorious Bold Predictions podcast for the upcoming NBA season, which starts next week. It's finally here. I'm here with Shamit Dua. We're going to talk a little bit about the West. I'm excited, man. What's going on? How are things for you?
Things are great, man. NBA season is back. I get to watch Zion play, although he's not playing tonight. Things are fun. I'm so excited for the season to kick off here as the preseason winds down.
I know it's going to be so good, isn't it? It's going to be fun. We're going to get to finally see some exciting players play. Jamal Murray, Zion Williamson. You get to see Damian Lillard play real important games again, which I feel like, nobody's talking about the fact we get to see Damian Lillard again. And I could not be more excited to see Dame because that dude is awesome when he's in a highly competitive situation. They're going to need him every night because we're going to talk about the Blazers here in a little bit. As with the podcast that went live yesterday, this is going to be the second part of this Bold Predictions episode. I'm going to give a bold prediction, then Shamit is going to give one. We're going to go back and forth with takes, basically. That is the way that this one is going to roll. Shamit, how are things going for you? I feel like it's been since the summer that I've had you on.
Yeah, man. It was a good summer. I got to play a lot of Frisbee, which is my passion. And that's my season has personally ended. Now I get to coach. So I coach Tulane University's men's team in New Orleans. And so the summer treated me well. The fall has been good. Beautiful weather out here in New Orleans right now. It was like the high of 85 today. And it's right now it's probably like 77. So it's really nice out here. And I just got back from the gym and I'm shoveling down food. So if you guys see me eating or drinking, that's what's going on.
I love it. What do you got? Tell us what you got food wise.
It's nothing special. Actually, it's quite basic, but this is a Morningstar vegetarian chicken nugget. And that was the quickest thing I could throw in the air fryer before hopping on this pod. So I was like, all right, what's in the freezer? Here we go. And that's what I'm eating. And I got some key lime La Croix.
Yeah, sure. We're rolling. It's beautiful. Is it La Croix or is it LaCroix? I've never known. In Ohio, when I was at Ohio State, we called it LaCroix. That's all I know.
When you're trying to be bougie, it's La Croix. And then
that's true.
Times it's LaCroix.
There we go. I like that one. There we go. When we're trying to be bougie, it's LaCroix. I like that. And I don't know. Is this a bougie podcast? Probably not, to be honest with it. But
it has its moments.
It has its moments. Yeah, that's true. Let's jump in. So do you want to go first or do you want me to go first on these Western Conference takes? Do you have something extra spicy that you need to get off your chest?
Extra spicy that I need to get off my chest? No, I mean, I like to start with positives. So I think there's plenty of time to sort of tear down teams and talk about, how you don't believe in them. But, I think my big positive to kick things off is I'm a big believer in the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I think they're going to be a home court level team this year. And they're going to pose problems for teams that are increasingly investing in small ball, which I think has a place in the playoffs. And I guess my belief with them follows them up until the playoffs. When they get to the playoffs, I think it'll be matchup dependent. But in the regular season, I think they're going to be an absolute machine. And the way they're going to be able to clean up on the glass, the way they're going to be able to offensive rebound, I think they have the perimeter talent as well with obviously Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell, and just the presence of Rudy Gobert backing their defense. I just think they're one of those teams that cleans up on regular season wins and just secures like a 3 seed or something like that. And you're like, you look up and you're like, whoa, how'd they get there in the standings? Because when you look back at the last time the Timberwolves made the playoffs before this past year, when they had Jimmy Butler, they were one of the league's best offensive teams. And it wasn't because they were, a fantastic shooting team or anything. It was because they were killing teams on the offensive glass. You're getting a bunch of points in the paint. And it was the second chance opportunities that like really raised their possession efficiency. And they were, for a Tibbs team, they were a really bad defensive team. And until Jimmy Butler went down that season, they were a home court level team. And then Jimmy Butler missed a whole slate of games, and they slid back all the way to the 8th seed that year, and they kind of just got whopped by the James Harden Rockets in the playoffs. But they for a large stretch of that season, they were just kind of cruising through wins in the regular season because they were taking all the low hanging fruit, which is what a Tom Thibodeau team does. And I think they will do that and more with the creativity of Chris Finch.
Yeah, I think this is a good take. This is something I pretty strongly agree with, to be honest. I do think that the Timberwolves are going to be a great regular season team this year. Rudy Gobert just raises the tide of the defense at the end of the day in the regular season. He just does. And I actually think their offense is going to be better than their defense, just being real with it. Like, I think that Rudy Gobert and Karl Towns pose very substantial problems for any opposing team. Karl Towns is going to be a mismatch nightmare at the 4 in the regular season when you don't have time to kind of try and like come up with a game plan night after night going into these games to try and take advantage of him off the bounce. You can come up with something, and NBA players are geniuses, and I'm sure they'll try and take advantage of the lack of foot speed this team will have on the perimeter on a night-by-night basis. But it's a little bit harder when you're not actively game planning for it. And I think because of that, their ability to just bludgeon teams, kind of like you're saying, is absolutely right. Like, I think that's going to happen at the end of the day. I think that this Timberwolves team, it sounds like you're kind of with me on this, and I'll let you stop chewing before we take you off mute. But like, I think that this team probably wins 53 games, like something like that. That's probably right around the range. And to me, like that, a team that has a new identity, a team that has such a substantial, like new, I don't know, I guess that I would say Rudy Gobert is probably their best player. All due respect to Anthony Edwards and Karl Towns. I don't know if either of those guys would agree with that. It's going to be interesting to see what they look like. But I think that this is what happens when you have 3, let's call them potentially top 25 players in the league in this, this season at the very least. And Anthony Edwards certainly has ceiling beyond that. I'm going to be fascinated to see the way it all kind of morphs together, but I think they pose real problems for teams in the regular season. I completely agree with you. Their offense, just in the way that they're going to be able to space the floor, in terms of the way they're going to be able to vertically get downhill toward the basket, in terms of the way that like Anthony Edwards is actually a really good fit with Rudy Gobert, because Rudy is always constantly diving toward the rim. Edwards, for as much as we love Anthony Edwards, and we do like Anthony Edwards' game here at the very least, he is someone that really does feel very comfortable pulling up and not using his athletic tools to just like rock the rim constantly. He doesn't get to the foul line as much as you would think necessarily. I actually really like that fit with Rudy Gobert. I think having that downhill presence going toward the basket is going to be really valuable for him. And then D'Angelo Russell, like for as much shit as D'Angelo Russell gets, right? Like for as much as people like to try and find fake trades for him, he's still something in the vein of like the 10th to 15th best point guard offensively in the NBA. And he got better defensively last year. So across the board, like this team should be really, really good in the regular season. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I really like their thought process. I think it was Chris Finch maybe that gave the quote where their team sort of looked at top 30 players in the league and looked at who would be available potentially, and then they kind of honed in on Gobert. It's like, hey, this guy is available and fits, and also is locked in long term, so you're not really a flight risk. That's a really good thought process for any team to have. Is I'm a big believer in, if you have the ability to go get a top 30 player anytime, you should, because you're trying to win basketball games. That's the name of the game. And the cool thing about adding him is you're not overhauling your offensive hierarchy. Typically, when you're adding a top 30 player, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how does this player fit offensively with my best players? And there's still going to be some of that in terms of spacing, but it's not going to be, oh, he wants the ball in crunch time. Or he's the one that's used to running a million pick and rolls. So where is he going to seed his usage and that kind of stuff? So, you talked about him accenting Anthony Edwards' game and D'Angelo Russell's game. Yeah, he does a lot of that dirty work. Utah will never let you forget about how many screen assists this guy racks up, right? And
all due respect to Karl Towns, like the dirty work stuff isn't stuff he loves doing, right? Like, let's just call it what it is, right? He's a skill player. it'd probably be unfair to call him a finesse player because of how capable he is of taking someone down on the block and like taking advantage of them with his gifts and his, touch and fluidity and everything. But he's not someone that's going to like crash the offensive glass repeatedly and try to create extra possessions, right? Or like, he's going to try and slip a screen to get to the 3-point line and get an open shot. Like that's more what his, game is. And that's okay. It's very functional and incredible offensively. It's just, it's a good fit with Gobert, I think, though, offensively.
Yeah, and they're going to get 48 minutes of elite big man play. And that's not something every team can say. And it's something teams are going to have to match up towards or try to force the Timberwolves' hand one way or another. Either way, it represents an extreme in this league. And it's an experiment I want to see, partially because Chris Finch, when he was in New Orleans, they had basically half a year of Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. And I don't want to compare that pairing to the Rudy Gobert and Towns pairing in terms of like what they do on the floor, but it's just the idea of just adding a ton of skill at two big positions and just being bigger than everybody else for 48 minutes. And it's a fun brand of basketball.
It's going to be interesting. They need to figure out like the 3 position. I think that they realistically probably need to figure out the backup point guard position. Like I think they could do a little bit better than Jordan McLaughlin, just getting in and out of offense. All due respect to McLaughlin.
How much of a believer are you in Jalen Noel? And because I think,
yeah, I like him. I like him quite a bit. I just don't know that he's like going to get the team in and out of its sets, right? Like he's just a flamethrower off the bench, right?
Exactly. And so, yeah, you're right. They will need, if they had Ricky Rubio still, the ghost of Ricky Rubio. But yeah. I mean, it looks their depth is a little bit suspect simply because of how much they had to give up to match Gobert's salary. And so while they can withstand, one of Gobert Towns going down, probably it gets a little sketchier when they're already thin wing depth. Is put under the microscope. So if McDaniels or Sloan miss time, okay, what are you doing there? And the guard play, like you mentioned. So if D'Angelo Russell's going down, if Anthony Edwards misses any sort of time, it becomes a little bit more difficult to manage. But a lot of teams in the West, you can say that about right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And look, like anytime a star player goes down, it's a problem, right? Like it's one of those deals where teams are built around the idea of what they can be at their absolute ceiling as opposed to what they can be when things go wrong, right? So anytime a star goes down, it's going to be a problem. Okay, let's move on. I like that. I think that's a good start. I think being positive about the Minnesota Timberwolves, something we did on this podcast often last year as well, and I'm excited about moving forward. Let's jump into another exciting thing here. Ja Morant. There is no more exciting player in the NBA than Ja Morant. I think Ja Morant makes first team All NBA this year. That is my take. He is flying this preseason. I know everyone saw the crazy highlight on Thursday night where he, just ripped the ball from Bojan Bogdanovic and then sprinted full speed behind the back dribble into a tomahawk two-handed dunk. But I just think that this is the kind of season we're going to get from Ja Morant. We're going to get an absolute superstar, one of the 5 to 7 best players in the league, unquestionably, no doubt, from Ja Morant this season. We're talking 28 points a game, like 8 or 9 assists per game. I think that he is going to make All NBA over all but one of, let's say, Stephen Curry, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, all of the great guards in the NBA, Chris Paul, whoever you want to bring up. I'm just trying to bring up guys off the top of my head. There are many great guards across the league. I think Ja Morant proves himself to be one of the top 2 guards in the NBA this season and makes first team All NBA.
That's definitely a bold prediction. But I don't mind it because I think you have to ask yourself, if he didn't miss all those games last year, would he have gotten first team? And I think that's a fair question to ask because Steph's making first team. Okay, we'll grant that.
Yep.
But the Grizzlies was going to make first team last year. But the Grizzlies having the second best record, if Ja had played 70 games and instead of 55 or however many
55
he played,
or something,
would he have been first team? And I think you can make a case that hit that last season. And so with Jaren Jackson going down and missing however much time he's going to miss, they're going to have to make up that scoring somewhere, that production somewhere. And, he's always on 10. Like he's like every game.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Every minute he plays, like he's relentless. He's just going at you every single time. And so yeah, I think that is very well within the realm of possibility. And frankly, I'm expecting Desmond Bane to make another jump.
Yeah, I
agree.
think
I'm looking at if the Grizzlies are once again a home court level team this year, it's either A, Morant's having an MVP level season, which he's capable of, or B, Bane has made the jump from very good player to all-star caliber. And those are the two things that I'm looking for. And that's another guy where I think he is flashing his game and not at a ceiling yet, even though he was an older prospect. Even though, he was really productive last year, I think there's still like another level to his game where we might see it this year just out of necessity with Jackson missing time.
Yeah, with Dez, I think he goes for 20 points per game. That can be like a secondary bold prediction. But the thing that I think is really underrated about the way Memphis has built this team is I know that their over-under win total is lower this year than what it's been in the past. And what they won last year, right? I think that their over-under win total is something like 47.5 or 46.5, something like that. And I just believe in this team to win regular season games is what it comes down to. Like, I believe that they are just going to out hustle, out compete teams because those are the guys that they draft. They evaluate and just select guys that are hyper competitive and want to win. And I think that hyper competitiveness led by Ja Morant is going to lead them to win more regular season games. I was like kind of on the fence as to whether or not I think they win like more than, 45 games whenever I did the Over Unders podcast a month ago with Robbie Callan. But the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, they're going to win games. Like Ja Morant is going to will them to win games. And that's fucking reductive on some level, right? Like I think that's like kind of it's kind of gross analysis. Yeah, like it's kind of gross analysis just to be like, oh yeah, like this guy's gonna will a team to win games. But you look at the way he competes, you look at the way that his energy level just lifts the boat. It feels like everyone feels like they have to get onto his level in some vein. I think that really helps. And beyond that, he's just an absolute superstar. He is the absolute most athletic player in the league right now. And because of that, he can drive transition play. He can get past anyone at will at the point of attack offensively. Like he is just going to create so much offense for them. And I'm glad you brought up the point about Jaren Jackson. I think that Dez takes up some of those minutes for Jaren, some of those possessions where, they run Desmond off of more actions and he maybe takes on a couple more on ball reps, right? But I do think it's going to be a lot more Ja Morant. And I think we're going to see Ja while Jaren's out. Like if he's averaging 30 points a night, I don't think that would surprise me because I can see Ja Morant just saying, screw this. Our guy is out right now. And I need to be the dude that carries the boat for us while our guy gets back. And I think that because of that, he's going to just completely drive play for them, probably averaging 30 points and 8 assists for the first 2 months of the season. And he is going to be considered a very real MVP candidate after those first 2 months. I think in the end of the day, he kind of settles in as a first team all NBA kind of caliber player.
So I am with you on the Ja assessment. I'm not with you on the Grizzlies being a regular season machine this year. And there's for two reasons why. One, again, it is Jaren Jackson Jr.'s injury. I think with the combination of Ja returning to the starting lineup and Jaren Jackson missing time, their defense isn't going to be as stingy as it was last year. And I think they're going to lose a few more games because of that. Two, I think they've made a conscious decision as an organization to open up minutes for some of the younger players. And that's moving away from Melton. That's moving away from Slow-Mo, who are not only good NBA players, played pretty solid roles on that team, especially holding them together defensively. And so as you're introducing more minutes to Zaire Williams, as you're introducing more minutes to even guys like David Roddy and I'm forgetting who else.
Jake LaRavia.
Yes, Jake LaRavia. I think they're making the decision, hey, we'll sacrifice some short-term wins, knowing that these reps are going to be really valuable and they're going to ultimately raise our ceiling. So we're gonna develop some of these players. And what that may look like is maybe they do win only 45 this year or 46 or whatever their over-unders at. But it sets them up for the next year and the year after that, because these players have played valuable minutes and, they've gotten that chemistry. And so when Jaren Jackson does return, all of a sudden, the Grizzlies are projected to be a deep team, but they're now truly a deep team because there's valuable minutes that each of these young players have played. But I think there's going to be a learning curve for those players. As well as they draft, I don't think all of those players are going to be day one impact players. And because of that, I think there's going to be some sacrifice in the regular season for wins right now. But ultimately, they're betting on our ceiling will be higher next year and the year after that because of what we're doing this season.
So here would be my counter to that. And I don't think you're wrong. Like, I think there is a real chance of that happening. So they have to make up basically 3,000 minutes for D'Anthony Melton and Kyle Anderson. That's a lot of minutes, right? Dylan Brooks only played like 800 minutes last year. So they're going to get right around like 1,200 extra minutes there. So now it's down to like 1,800 that you have to make up. I think they can get, an extra 300, 400 minutes from Brandon Clark. And I think they can get an extra like 300, 400 minutes from John Conchar and Zaire Williams each and be fine. Like, I think there's a pretty real case John Conchar is probably as good as D'Anthony Melton is right now in the way that he operates.
It's a sneaky player they have.
Yeah, John Conchar is really good. Last year, he was 52% from the field, 41% from three, and he only made 55% of his 50 free throw attempts. But like, he rebounds super well. He moves the ball along the perimeter a little bit more than D'Anthony does. He doesn't drive transition play in the same way D'Anthony does. But I actually think for second units where Tyus Jones is in, it's a little bit better of a fit in terms of getting offensive half-court efficiency. I think there is a real chance that John Conchar is just as good as D'Anthony Melton is this year. And that's like a wild take for some, I guess, but maybe not. I think that they're going to be able to find those minutes, I guess is my take. Like, they'll figure out where they need to get the minutes from. And it might not even require a crazy amount of the minutes from players like David Roddy and Jake LaRavia. It's just like, if Zaire Williams is ready, if I think Conchar is ready. I think Brandon Clark's ready. Like, I think they can get the extra minutes they need, while leaning on the rookies a little bit, but maybe not as much as people seem to think. They're going to have to lean on the rookies.
I think that's fair. And obviously all we can do is guess at it. But I think with regards to Conchar, I'm with you. With regards to Brandon Clark, he's been kind of up and down with them. And there's been moments where he's been like supremely productive. And I think what happens is he works really well with Jaren Jackson. And so if you're playing him with Steven Adams, I'm a little bit skeptical on how that's going to work out. And it looks like Santi Aldama is going to take that starting spot for now, which is also an experiment that's going to be worth watching. And I was expecting more from Xavier Tillman, and I was under this impression that he was really productive for them last year. And then I was on Fast Break Fast with Keith. I was on that pod, and he was telling me, actually, like, Xavier Tillman wasn't fantastic, because I pitched to him. I was like, how much of a drop off is there from Steven Adams to Xavier Tillman? And he was like, a big one. I think it was pretty big as well. Yeah. And that was something for whatever reason, I was under the impression that, Tillman's been great. And, I was a big fan of him in the draft process. I was just not used to doing Tillman things.
Yeah. I'll even give you something else. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Santi Aldama by the end of the year, maybe not early in the season, by the end of the year, kind of take those minutes. I know the Grizzlies really, really like Santi and what he can bring to the table. He is very skilled. They like his ability to handle the ball a little bit, but more so they think he can shoot it at some point. They think he's really sharp. They think that he can, maybe provide minutes a little bit earlier than what people think, I guess is what I would say. They really liked his performance in the G League last year.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know. I'm in on the Grizzlies this year, but I'll give you the floor for your second bold prediction, Shamit.
My second bold prediction, I went positive my first one. Going negative on this one. I think this is the year where we see CP3 take that step back, hit the aging curve.
Oh no!
And I know. I'm just, I think there's a lot going on with the Suns, and I don't think that's something that's necessarily going to contribute to it. I think Father Time catches up with everyone, and I think this is the year. I think they had their best shot last year, and whatever was going on in that locker room, whether it was alleged COVID or just people not getting along, whatever it was, they petered out in a way that they should not have petered out. And this year will require more of an offensive presence from Mikal Bridges, more of an offensive presence from Cam Johnson. I think Booker is going to do his thing. That guy's a machine. I'm not worried about him. Not really worried about Ayton in terms of what he brings to the table. I think it's well known what he's going to do. I don't count on them trying to really expand his game in a way that's meaningfully different than how he's been utilized before. But CP3, man, my man, I think this is the year where those fourth quarter takeovers. Because if you look at the Suns, you look at their shot profile last year, right? And you look at everything else. Like the math just screamed to you, this should not have been a good team, right? They weren't high in rim attempts. They weren't high in rim efficiency. They weren't high in 3-point volume or efficiency. And they were just a buzzsaw in the mid-range area. And they were, again, one of the best clutch teams in the league. And that's been a trend ever since Chris Paul has walked onto an NBA court, because that guy is one of the best managers of all time. And I think if my prediction is correct, if he takes that step back, those clutch time victories, all of a sudden, instead of having like a 35-12 record or whatever it was in crunch time, it trends more towards 500 or worse. And so that's going to be something to monitor. I think teams are going to be able to pick on him defensively a little more this time around as well. And I still think he's going to pull out all the classic CP3 chicks, but the frequency of which he was able to have high-level offensive games and take over fourth quarters or just make the right play at the right time, I think that frequency is going to finally come down from a superhuman level, the way to which he's been operating at.
Yeah. So it's hard because these things go hand in hand. The way I'm kind of thinking of Chris Paul this year is almost like, I wonder if we see him play worse, like in the first through third quarters, and then saves it for the fourth quarter more often, right? Because those are the times where they like desperately need it. And maybe he lets Devin Booker kind of rock a little bit more in the first three quarters. And look, Devin's going to get his as it is, but maybe he lets Mikal Bridges go a little bit more. Maybe he lets these young guys that should be a little bit better go a little bit more, right? Like that could be the move here.
And that's kind of like what he's done.
Yeah.
Like throughout his career, he's sort of taken the first half to get a feel of the game, set the table. Third quarter, maybe probe a little more, and then fourth quarter, go for the kill. Like he attacks. It's my time, and I'm Chris Paul. And you're right. It's possible that this year he does even more of that to an extent. But I still think those fourth quarter, like I'm pretty sure he led the league in fourth quarter scoring last year, if I'm not mistaken. At least it was either efficiency or points or both. Something absurd. Like every time you pull up a Chris Paul clutch stat or fourth quarter stat, it's like he's at the top of those leaderboards. And I think this year, the frequency of him being able to do that on a routine basis, even if he takes it easy the first three quarters, finally, diminishes. That's my take on it.
So I don't mind it, right? I don't mind that take, because at some point, like aging curves happen, right? I think that aging curves are a real thing and it'll happen. Like, where do we think the Suns settle in this year, I guess is my question. This team won 64 games last year. That is so many games. Like they could lose 10 fewer, or they could win 10 fewer games and still end up being a 54 win team, and 54 wins almost assuredly gets you a home court playoff series in the West this year, right? So where do you think that this team settles in?
Well, I think that's part of the larger, my larger like disbelief in them. I don't like their vibes, and I don't like their depth.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things. One, I'm not like, I don't think like Jay Crowder's this amazing player that like they can't withstand losing, but they're really thin. Their bench is really, really thin. Secondly, I don't know who they signed as their backup center. It was like Jock Landale and then maybe someone else. But are they going to try to like squeeze every minute out of Bismack Biyombo again this year if Ayton misses any time or if like that's their reserve? I don't know. Maybe
Right.
okay. Maybe it's Dario Saric, right? That's the return of Dario Saric, and that's where we're going the backup five. But it's just like the combination of like, hey, if one of their main guards goes down, and their wing depth and their just depth in general, I feel like they're going to be more in the middle of the pack rather than being a front running team. And I think that's, again, like you said, they won 65 games. They could even be 15 wins worse and still be a 50-win team. And I think it's very possible that they're a 50-win team. But I just don't think they have the same edge or oomph that they did last year. And so what that looks like, I don't know. I currently had them, I think I had them like 5th or 6th seed just when I was projecting them out. But 5th to 6th seed in the West this year could be 52 wins. it could be something ridiculous.
Yeah, like I guess what I'm trying to figure out with them is like what does a slight reduction in the efficiency of their shot profile look like? You kind of brought up the idea of this team not always getting efficient shots, and that's because of who they have on the team, right? Like Chris Paul loves the mid-range area. Devin Booker likes, shooting from the mid-range. Honestly, Mikal Bridges, when they run like pull up and like pick and roll opportunities for him, he similarly does like to operate more in that range, and it leads to a lot of tough twos, let's call them, right? I just don't. Let's say that goes from being like they're the best tough two shooting team in the league, something like that, to being the 5th best. I can actually see that really reducing their offensive efficiency by like a more substantial margin than what you would expect. Then again, though, like that shot profile gives them real room for growth. You know what I mean? Like if they decide, okay, we have Cam Johnson in the starting lineup now, we have both Cam and Mikal in the corners, we have Devin on the opposite side, we have Chris on one side, maybe Chris on the opposite side, Devin on the strong side with the ball in his hands now. We obviously have a great rim runner in DeAndre. Like there's a space for them to drive a ton of shots at the basket. There's a space for them to drive a ton of shots from 3 now, even in a way that they didn't last year. So like, the potential is there for them to continue to have like an incredibly efficient offense, maybe just changing their shot profile to adjust to Chris's age more. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't, I can't even begin to predict what this team looks like as part of the problem. You know what I mean? Like, I just have no idea.
No, that's fair.
And that's crazy to say about a team that won 64 games last year that didn't really change anything coming into this season.
So I want to read you this stat, right? The Suns, their rim and 3 frequency, right? Their rim and 3 frequency, the percentage their shots they either take at the rim or from 3 was 58% last year. And that is good for 30th in the league. And the 29th team was 62%, a whole 4% higher than that. And obviously the Rockets led the league at 80%. League average was 68.8%. So they were a full 10 percentage points lower than league average. Like that's how far away they were in terms of their shot profile. So you're absolutely right. There is so much ground that they can make up by tweaking their shot efficiency. And I think by putting Cam Johnson out there, you have to utilize the fact that he's an excellent shooter. And excellent shooters should get a high volume of 3-point attempts. Otherwise, you're wasting them. But I think what you're asking them to do is you're asking Monty Williams to play in a way that he's never played before. He doesn't like playing. You're asking Chris Paul to play in a way he doesn't like playing. You're asking Devin Booker to go against his tendencies as well. So there are 3 main cogs of driving offense. You're asking them to basically do the opposite of what they're accustomed to doing, what they're comfortable doing. And while I think they're all talented individuals who are more than capable, of executing on it, if asked to, I question how quickly they're ready to commit to that change, and if they even recognize it as a problem. Do they internally view their shot profile as a problem? And I think if you give Monty Williams a truth serum, he probably says no. Chris Paul probably says no. Like, we were one of the best league's offenses. Like, why do we need to change much of this? And
and that doesn't even talk about the defense, right? Like, I have no idea what to expect from the defense, because DeAndre Ayton is such an incredibly important part of their defense, and I don't know what to expect from him this year.
No,
does
he make it to the end of the year? Do you think he makes it past the deadline? Is he on the Suns at the deadline?
I don't. I think it depends on the first 2 months of the year, to be honest. I really don't know. I love DeAndre Ayton. I just don't know if he's going to be, the defensive anchor that he was for them at times.
Sure.
No, I don't know.
I do think there's a drop from McGee to Sarge, on the bench units, even Biyombo to Sarge, as long as Biyombo was.
No, there is.
Unless Jock Landale has a great season, like maybe that's the breakout guy for him.
Maybe, possibly. I'm not convinced of that, I guess, but we'll see.
But that's not what you should be betting on as a contender. Like, if their eyes are, I want to be a championship team, that's not something you can count on.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with some takes on the West. Okay, we're back. My next take is another positive one. I think the Denver Nuggets win the Western Conference in the regular season. And this is just a team that proved what its floor was when Nikola Jokic is healthy last year. This team was without Jamal Murray, was without Michael Porter Jr., didn't really have like a significant number of high-end rotation players, it felt like. Look, Monte Morris started 74 games. I would say Monte Morris is probably like the 25th to 35th best point guard in the NBA, something like that. Like a starting quality point guard, but like right on the edge of that. Jeff Green last year played almost 2,000 minutes. Will Barton played almost 2,000 minutes last year, but last year was not Will Barton's best season by any stretch of the imagination. Austin Rivers played 1,500 minutes last season. Facu Campazzo played 1,200 minutes last season. JaMychal Green played 1,100 minutes last season. A rookie, Bones Highland, played a lot of minutes last season. They're replacing those minutes with like 2,000 Michael Porter minutes, 2,000 Jamal Murray minutes, 2,000 Kentavious Caldwell-Pope minutes. This team is going to be, I think, way better than what we saw last year. And that team won 48 games. I think this team has a chance to win 58, 59, 60 games even, and not run away with the West. Like, I think it'll be close down to the last month, but I think this team does win the West as long as Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. stay healthy, because we just know how good this team is in the regular season with the buzzsaw efficiency that is Nikola Jokic processing basketball in the regular season.
I had to find the mute button. Look, I think that's a good take. The only pushback I have on it is, like, I don't think you can just pencil in 2,000 Michael Porter Jr. minutes, but the overall concept of you're adding Porter Jr., you're adding Jamal Murray, and in my opinion, one of the more impactful additions is going to be KCP. They've been searching for their Gary Harris replacement, so to speak, the guard who can chase people around screens and hit threes when you need to, and just sort of be a defensive presence when you need it. So now they have KCP and Aaron Gordon just on that perimeter, shoring up their defense, which is a much better starting point than they've had. I'm just trying to think back, like when they've even had that kind of defensive talent on the perimeter in the Jokic era, and maybe when they had Jeremy Grant, but like still, the point stands is their defensive versatility improve this year. Obviously, they're adding a ton of offensive firepower. That's a good prediction in my opinion, provided everyone stays healthy. The Porter Jr. I don't know what his back is like, and anytime you start hearing about like back procedures and that kind of stuff, it gets dicey. But hey, that dude is 6'10" and can shoot 45% from three. Talk about a perfect and then dunk it on everybody. Talk about a perfect fit with Nikola Jokic, and it goes back to the conversation we were having about having excellent game managers who can just orchestrate possession after possession after possession, and Nikola Jokic being one of the league's premier ones. Now having a backcourt partner in Jamal Murray, because their two-man game going back to the bubble was insane, right? And they have really now truly figured out how to play with each other and leverage each other's strengths, and like, the fact that Murray can pull up at any time. He's an off the dribble threat. He is shifty with his handles. And he does, but he can play off the ball. He can literally run circles around Jokic until he gets open, and whether that's a layup or a three, that's going to be very, very exciting to watch. I wish Denver Nugget fans had a better way to watch them locally, but
yeah, I know, right? Like, what are we doing here? Come on, Denver, get your shit together. Like,
yeah.
Let's figure this out. No, but like, look, it's a perfectly formulated roster around Nikola Jokic, because Michael Porter is so good as a cutter. He's so good as a shooter, right? Jamal Murray is a really underrated cutter as a point guard who is happy to play off the ball next to Nikola Jokic, who is going to dominate the ball due to his processing ability in the half court. You look at situations like KCP, who you brought up, like that's a huge get for them, because it just takes pressure off Jamal Murray defensively. It's going to allow him to take more of a blow, on the defensive side of the court, which he might need coming back from injury, just getting his conditioning back, just getting everything back together in terms of his game, right? Aaron Gordon's a huge addition for them too. We're finally going to get to see Aaron Gordon in the role he was acquired to play, right? Like, Aaron Gordon was not acquired to be like the number 2, number 3 option on this Nuggets team. He was acquired to be the number 4, number 5 option, and play high level defense and take some of the tougher matchups on the wing. I think that his ability to play off Nikola Jokic has already proven to be pretty useful in that setting. I think that moving him into a role that more befits his game is going to be really valuable for Denver. I think there is a case that this ends up being the best starting lineup in the Western Conference this year, just with the way that all 5 of those pieces complement one another perfectly. Nikola Jokic is the MVP candidate. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. are the all-star candidates if things really break right for Michael Porter Jr., let's say. And then you have the 2 glue guys in KCP and Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon, the incredible cutter. KCP, really high-level shooter, 3-and-D guy, can take on tough guard assignments. It all just morphs really, really well in a way that I think makes a lot of sense for the way that this team is actually constructed.
Yeah. I think Nuggets fans are obviously going to be pleased by this, but just removing those Campazzo minutes and giving them to Bones and investing in that guy is going to do a lot for their roster. And I'm excited to see Bones also take a leap with just now explicitly having control of the second unit now that Monty Morris is with the Wizards. And that's going to be another area where, like, hey, he's got not a dissimilar skill set to Jamal Murray, but also someone that pairs well with Jokic. I thought the Andre Jordan acquiring was a little weird. I guess
I have concerns.
They're not a fan of how Zeke Naji's developing. I'm not entirely sure. But that's going to be something to watch with their big man depth. And there was another thing. Yeah, I mean, like, this is going to be.
They acquired Bruce Brown. Like, Bruce Brown's another, like, Aaron
totally
Gordon
forgot about that
type that works perfect, right? Like, he works really well with
you're upgrading Austin Rivers to Bruce Brown. Like, that's a good upgrade.
Yeah, totally right. Like, it just makes a lot of sense. Like, I really like Christian Brown long-term is a fit with them. I really like Peyton Watson long-term is a fit with this team's core. Like, I think that they're drafting guys that make sense. maybe they play early, maybe they don't. But, Christian Brown, I think, has a reasonable chance to come in and like maybe play minutes. I think Peyton Watson is more ready than what he showed at UCLA last year, at the very least. He's shown some, sneaky active moments maybe in the preseason. Preseason is a better way to put it, as opposed to like real tangible, rotation level minutes in the preseason. So yeah, they just do a really good job of finding guys that complement the players that they have already, their stars and their star structure, and that sets them up for success in terms of being able to play. No, I'm a big fan. I'm a big
they've
fan.
Certainly increased their athleticism on their roster.
Yeah.
Quietly. It hasn't. There hasn't been any like huge splashy athletic acquisitions outside of Aaron Gordon. That guy's a monster athlete. But like you said, you just mentioned Peyton Watson. You mentioned Christian Brown. Like that, those guys are going to be, I think, good additions, as you mentioned, with things running around Jokic. It's just hard to like when you have a guy like Jokic. It's hard. You could talk yourself into anybody. You could put like almost any NBA player on the roster and be like, yeah, like this is gonna work. Like, hey, they can catch the ball and dunk it. Oh yeah, Jokic will pass it to him. Oh, they can shoot well. Yeah, Jokic will get it to him. It's like you can talk yourself into anything there, and I think there's a good reason for optimism. Do you think with this success, if you say they're going to be the best team, you think then at this point Jokic is going to three-peat with his MVP?
No, I said on the last pod, I think Embiid wins it because I think that the Sixers win the East, but I think that they give it to Embiid this year. Basically, look, I dismissed it last year with Jokic. I thought there's no way the voters are going to vote Nikola Jokic for MVP 2 times in a row, especially after it was like pulling teeth the first time when I thought he was the rightful winner. I thought there was no way they're going to do it again. Right. They did it again. So look, I'm not about to say that they're not going to do it. If they win the West this year, they could very well do it. But I think that Joel Embiid needs to win an MVP at some point is where I'm at.
If Jokic three-peats, that puts him in very, very interesting all-time conversations. And he's still young. And obviously like he has to truly break into that upper echelon in all-time rankings. Like he's going to have to win a championship or 2 here.
So like Nikola Jokic and Giannis are both 27 years old, right? Yeah. Giannis has won 2 MVPs. Nikola Jokic has won 2 MVPs. I don't even really think it's close which one is more relevant in a historical context. It's very clearly Giannis because he is the title. Right. His Finals MVP.
Defensive Player of the Year.
Defensive Player of the Year. Like it's very clear. 3 MVPs in a row. Like, do you almost have to push Jokic ahead of Giannis? I don't really think so. I think it would screw up. Look, and the voters have done this many times previously. Like, I think it would screw up the historical context of this era a little bit to have Jokic win 3 straight MVPs. All due respect to Jokic, like I think he's a very deserving MVP winner, MVP candidate year after year after year, and I think that the Nuggets are going to be great this year, obviously. But to have him win 3 in a row in this era, I think would be weird, given what he's done so far, I guess, right?
I think it changes. It would either then change the conversation of MVP voting moving forward, or open itself up to a ton of scrutiny, or both, where people are like, okay, like we really got to standardize this in some way, form, or fashion. But, it's always one of those things where it's like 15 years from now, like what are people going to look back on? And are they going to look back and say, oh, he won these 3 MVPs and there weren't any other really good candidates? Or, oh, they media just kind of voted it, gave it to him, but he never ended up winning anything else significant. I don't know. It's certainly going to be fascinating to say the least.
Okay, your last bold prediction, Shamit.
The last one, I'm not sure how bold it is, but I feel like the Trailblazers are going to enter the Wembanyama sweepstakes.
Okay, I'll hit pause on this one here because I also have a Blazers questionable bold prediction is my last one too. So
yeah,
continue on yours.
Yeah, look, I as you mentioned to open this podcast, Damian Lillard is an absolutely electric player, and they're going to need him every single night. I just don't think they have the overall talent or the depth to survive what is going to be a gauntlet of a Western Conference. And should Lillard get injured and miss any stretch of like 10 games, I think they're just cooked. And they got nothing behind that to ride the tide. I mean, they were losing games by 40, 50 points. I mean, they were trying to lose games, mind you, last year towards the end of the years, but they were really losing those games. Those were ugly, ugly games. And I think, they have individually some like intriguing players. I would like them more if they had successfully pulled that trade off for OG Anunoby. But, I don't think acquiring Jeremy Grant like fixes all of their defense. I think
honestly, I don't know if it fixes any of their defense based off the preseason.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Anthony Simons and Damian Lillard still have the same challenges of the CJ backcourt, even though Simons is bigger. He's just
but he's worse defensively. That's the problem.
He's just not good defensively. Josh Hart is a Pels fan's favorite, but he is who he is at this point. And he's going to hustle and play hard, but I don't think he's a tremendous needle mover. In any case, Nurkic misses time every single year. And who do they have behind him? What is their big man depth?
Yeah. So you bring up Josh Hart. I actually loved Josh Hart for them late in the season. I thought it was one of like the very underrated like things that was happening across the NBA was that Josh Hart like seemed to take a real offensive leap in those games that he played with the Blazers. He played like probably 15 of them before they were like, oh shit, no, he's too good. We need to shut him down. He averaged 20 points on 50% from the field, 37% from three, 77% from the line, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Like he was really good in those. He played 13 games looking at it now.
Yeah. I mean,
he was awesome.
He's a streaky shooter. I don't believe in that 37. He attempted 6 threes a game and made 37%. I don't think that's sustainable for him.
Yeah.
Two, like,
I don't know if it is either.
It's April basketball. I like that. I'm happy for him. I do think he took a leap as a playmaker this past year in general. We saw it with the Pelicans too.
It was like March basketball for what it's worth. Like he did not play in April because they were like, we can't do this.
Yeah,
like, we got to get him out of here.
Mean, I think he's a streaky player. I think he's going to have amazing games for them. I think he's certainly going to have games where he's like scores 4 points but grabs 12 rebounds, and that's what he's there to do. But yeah,
so here's what I'd say about Josh though. They're not playing him really in that role in the preseason. He is like, from the games I've seen, he's been like almost invisible within their offense. Like he hasn't.
There's so many mouths. I mean, like it's not like real mouths to feed, but they have mouths to feed because Lillard's going to get. He's going to take his shots no matter what, right? Simons, you just paid him $100-something million. Like you are going to give him shots. Otherwise, why not? Why would you not do that?
Yep.
Jeremy Grant, you don't trade for that guy, and that guy is certainly not someone that's going to sacrifice shots. Like there's already 3 people in the hierarchy above Josh Hart. And then you're like, okay, well, is Nurkic going to get more touches?
Yeah, I was going to say like Nurkic isn't really like a low usage, like ball screen and roll center.
Exactly.
Like he's more of a guy that like likes to survey and touch the ball and like handle it a little bit.
Yeah. He likes to play make. He likes to do things. And so where does that leave Josh Hart? And then you look at their bench and who is it? I mean, Gary Payton Jr. is not going to take shots on the bench. Are they going to play Shaedon Sharpe real minutes?
I think they're going to have to. Shaedon actually looks like pretty okay in the preseason so far. Yeah, he looks more ready to play than what I thought he'd be. And that'll be critical, right? Like, if
I think they're going to have to play him. I do think they're going to lose those minutes by a hefty margin. Like the plus minus is not going to be good in Shaedon Sharpe minutes. And it's
here's the thing.
You trust
We're talking about offense. We're talking about offense here. Their defense is terrible.
The defense is so bad. And it always has been. It's always been terrible. They blamed it on
like we're talking about like finding guys shots. Like we're talking about like, oh, we need to find Josh Hart shots. Like Josh Hart's good, but their defense is really bad. Like, and their defense looks bad this preseason again, rotationally. Their defense looks like they still haven't figured out like where they need to go, how they need to move within sync and be one rotationally. Because at the end of the day, it goes back to what you said at the top. Damian Lillard coming off of an injury and Anthony Simons just being Anthony Simons at this point of his career. You know, maybe he gets a little bit better as he gets to being 25 years old as opposed to 23 years old, 26 years old as opposed to being 23 years old. They just aren't good enough to contain the ball. And then once that ball contain gets broken, it's kind of over for them. You know what I mean? Like they just don't move well enough as one to really make it work. Gary Payton's going to be missing, like, it seems like a few weeks here to start the year. I would not be surprised if they have the worst defense in the league through 3 weeks, like before Gary Payton comes back, basically. I think it's going to be really, really bad. I just don't know. Like my prediction was they win like under 34 games, basically. I think their over under is like 39.5 or something. So that's like a pretty substantial, like, you know, I'm setting it basically like 34.5. That's a pretty big drop off there. I'm just, yeah, I mean, this could go poorly. I think this could go really poorly.
You know, those first 3 weeks that you mentioned, I'm pulling up their strength of schedule right now. So give me a second. So they're in the average line of strength of schedule. It's fine. You know, it's not neither good nor bad.
I don't really agree with that. I'm looking at the teams, right?
Wait, I didn't filter it for the dates. Okay, let me do it.
Yeah, so October 19th opening night for them is at the Kings. The Kings can slice you up offensively. Like, I have no idea if the Kings are going to be able to defend either.
So Thanksgiving, they're like, they have like the sixth hardest or fifth to sixth hardest strength of schedule. So it's not good.
Right.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So they play the Kings, they play the Suns, Lakers, Nuggets, Heat, Rockets, Grizzlies, Suns back to back, Heat. Then they get a respite against the Hornets. Then they get Pelicans, Mavericks, and that's their first 13 games.
Jesus.
That's a loaded first 13. Like, that could look bad.
Like, you can start 4-9. Like, and that could be 3-10. And when, at what point do you decide, hey, this really tall French dude, maybe we should.
Well, it won't be that early. Yeah,
no,
like, it won't be that early that they make that call. But
especially with Dame on the team, like, they're gonna probably wait till the deadline.
Right.
And even at the deadline, they'll be buyers because the play-in, because the play-in, they will want to try to make it for the play-in. They're like, oh, well, with Dame, if we can get one more piece at the deadline, and you know, the Pelicans did it, like, we can do it too. And actually they have done. They in the bubble, they were part of the first play-in team that, you know, made the playoffs there. But still, like, with Dame on the roster, they're gonna try to go. I think
they're gonna be favored in one of these first 10 games. I don't think they're gonna be favored against the Kings opening night because it's at Sacramento, right?
No.
So, like, that's maybe a toss-up, but like, Suns, no. At the Lakers, no. Nuggets at home, no. Heat at home, probably not. Rockets at home, they'll be favored. Grizzlies at home, probably not.
No.
Suns on the road. Heat on the road. Like, that's one game that they're favored in the first 10. That could turn bad in a hurry. And that's without Gary Payton, who is like their savior defensively this year. And he's a great defender, but like, and great at what they need defensively in terms of ball pressure and in terms of being able to guard at the point of attack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I agree with you. Look, I think Dame is there for the long haul. Seems like he wants to be there. But I do think at some point
earn your way to over $500 million. Yeah, I don't blame that at all, man. There are bigger things in life, and I don't have any qualms with what Dame's trying to do. Whether, you know, he's basically like, keep paying me the max you can possibly pay me, or send me somewhere if you don't want me. But I'm not going to put, you know, I'm not the one that's going to put my foot down. I'm just going to I'll ask for all the money I can get.
No, I agree. We're done here. I think the Blazers are going to be tough. Going to be a tough watch at times this year. Dame will provide some spark moments, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect from them. while I have you, given that we did the same final bold prediction, let's talk Pelicans, because I am excited to see this team. I don't know what to expect from this team just because of like the Zion Jonas combo, the way that offensive roles will kind of settle in, all of it, right? Like I think it's going to be just a weird mishmash of figuring things out early as much as anything. Like they're going to have to figure out roles, opportunities. Do they play Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels together at times with non-shooting? Can you play Herb Jones and Zion together regularly with their non-spacing and shooting? It's going to be interesting. Like I just don't know what to expect, I guess. So I'll ask you. You're the expert here. So give me some Pelicans takes. What are you expecting to see from them?
I do expect them on a big level, on a large level. I expect them to be a good team because
I agree with you on that for what it's worth. Like I just don't know how it's gonna be good, I guess.
So
right?
Their pathways to be good, in my opinion, are going to rely on their interior presence on multiple fronts. So it's Zion's historic ability to attack the paint and rim. It's that efficiency. It's Jonas also being a factor there. So one, I think they're going to lead the league or close to it in free throw attempts. How many Zion makes, we'll see. But that's going to, even if he makes 65%, you're getting 1.3 points per possession, which will be the best offense in history of all time, and it wouldn't be close. So I think they're going to lead the league in free throw attempts. I want to say they were 1 or 2 last year, even without Zion. They were pretty high up there, but I think they're going to lead the league there. I think they're going to lead the league in offensive rebounding or be very close to it. I think Minnesota has the other argument there. But for the last 3 years, they've been an absolutely elite offensive rebounding team. And if you're giving this team second chances, their possession efficiency is going to be very high. And I think, that's just strictly offense. And I think Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum are good enough self-creators to where when the offense does hit lulls, they can score at least like 1 point per possession just off their mid-range magic, and just keep the offense afloat until someone finally breaks loose. And they have the ability to ignite. CJ can absolutely get hot. Brandon can take over games. So I think the offense is if everyone remains healthy, they should be a top 5 offensive team because they're going to take care of the low-hanging fruit. They're going to be an absolute menace at the best shots in the league, which are free throws and rim attempts. And they have enough creation to take care of the rest. So that's where I'm coming in from them being good. I think defensively is going to be a pretty big question mark on how they operate, but I'm optimistic that they can, again, take care of the low-hanging fruit because they will be an elite defensive rebounding team. That's been one of their strengths for the last 3 years. I think there's no reason to assume that's not going to be the case this year. So that, if they're good at the defensive rebounds and not giving opponents second chance points, while also being a good offensive rebounding team, and being a team that converts a lot, they should, because of all of those things, they should play a lot more half-court defense rather than transition defense. And if they can do that, if they can force teams to play half-court ball, by nature, that should deflate some of the opponent offensive efficiency. And I think that this should be good enough to get them in the 15 to 20th range of defensive teams. I don't anticipate them being better than 15th. I don't anticipate them being much worse than 20th. So if they're in that range and they're top 5 offense, I think they're gonna clean up on a lot of regular season wins. And I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of fit question marks that we haven't seen addressed in the preseason because they literally have not played any of their starters together yet. Brandon Ingram's practically missed the whole preseason. He should be playing right now. Actually, I haven't checked, but theoretically playing as we're speaking. Brandon Ingram's on the court right now. But yeah, he's missed the whole preseason. CJ has been in and out. Herb missed a game, and then they're resting Zion for this final one. So the starting 5 has not seen the court together yet. Their first test will be against Brooklyn on opening night, and it'll be interesting. I do think I'm less concerned about the Jonas fit because Zion and Steven Adams, for all of their clashes, still produced a really good offense when on the court together. And I think you're not going to lose that with Jonas, and they should be able to do creative things where, hey, if a team is helping off of Jonas, well, maybe Jonas is on the weak side of the floor setting a pin down for CJ McCollum, and if you're letting CJ McCollum get off of a screen free, and your big's not out there meeting that the level of screen, then that's going to be a shooting gallery for CJ. Whether that's a step in 20-footer or that's a three, like CJ's going to make a lot of those shots. And again, if you're leaving Jonas by himself, he will eat you alive on the offensive glass. So I'm optimistic with how that fit looks. Herb Jones, I need him to be at least a 35% catch and shoot guy on decent volume. But even if he doesn't hit that, I think they will, by keeping him with those talented offensive players, the offense will be fine. He can be the Bruce Brown of that team. I think he's more talented offensively than Bruce Brown. There's certainly what they're doing this year is they're putting the ball in his hands and letting him initiate the offense. And I think that also helps raise the spacing a little bit, because, if he's bringing the ball down the court and he's going to ball screens immediately, you have to account for that. And if you don't account for that, then he's competent enough to put the ball on the floor and attack the rim. Yeah. So
the thing that's helpful, kind of thinking back, because you brought up the idea of like the 2021 team, right? Yeah. The thing that's helpful thinking back is that Zion figured it out playing with both Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe on the court together. Yeah. Like the fact that Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams were on the court together, two guys that just get no respect whatsoever as shooters. And like that was a time when Brandon Ingram like got less respect as a shooter as well.
Right. And
than what he does now.
He converted, but they weren't defending him.
They don't defend him as much. And Zion still figured it out. Now you do have CJ McCollum there, who is a genuine sniper from three. Like it becomes more interesting. I think that, if the thing that stands out most in my mind with like the Zion stuff is like the incredible fun that was like the JJ Redick, Zion Williamson 2-man game. Like that is still my favorite thing that we've seen from Zion Williamson on a basketball court yet. Essentially like letting JJ Redick be the screener for Zion Williamson and letting those two just kind of rock on the empty side of a court. And it's just like an almost impossible guard because of the mismatch problem that Zion creates.
And now do that with CJ McCollum, a guy who can.
Right now, you do that with CJ McCollum.
What's funny is we asked Zion about this in training camp. I think it was actually, I was like, was it me who asked him? But I'm pretty sure it was me who asked him. And I was, but it may have been someone else. But I think I asked him. Maybe I asked him about who cares who asked him. Anyways, we asked him about this specific question: your game with JJ Redick, and he was like, I love JJ, but no disrespect to him. CJ can actually dribble or something like that. It was a pretty.
I think JJ would probably be like, yeah, that's right.
and so I mean, that takes that 2-man game to another level. Where CJ, you can do that inverted pick and roll, and all of a sudden, if you've kicked it out to CJ and he's covered well, like if someone's flying to attack that, that closeout, then he can put the ball on the floor and zoom by that person. Whereas typically, and you can run like the traditional pick and roll with CJ, right,
with Zion as the screener, where the big basically has to stay at home on CJ because he's such a lethal mid-range shooter as well and can handle the ball and get to that spot where he's going to make a shot. And because he has to stay at home, that means the guard has to stay on Zion longer, which you can honestly probably like string out even more if you're CJ at times. Like you can string out that big and get the mismatch of Zion on that guard more often. Like that 2-man game between CJ and Zion is going to be lethal in big ways. And then you have Brandon on the second side of the floor. And that could go, this is going to be a top, I don't know. I don't remember what the exact number, what you said was offensively. This is going to be a top 5 offense. Yeah. This is going to be a top 5 offense.
And so I do think it'll take some time to figure out to iron out the kinks in the crunch time situation in terms of who's going to initiate, who's going to take that last shot, that kind of stuff. That will take time. Brandon Ingram historically, when incorporating a higher usage player with them, has taken a few games to get accustomed to like where his spots are. Same thing with CJ McCollum. I think it's natural when you have 3 like offensive talents who are all used to creating shots for themselves. Like there's going to be a period of adjustment that comes with it. But I just think that they can play in such versatile ways. We haven't talked about our favorite player, our collective favorite player, Sam, Trey Murphy III. That dude's been unreal in the preseason. And I just, I recorded my podcast with Mason.
Love him.
Before I got on here with you, and I was like, Mason, I got a hot take. I think I don't even think it's that hot. Trey Murphy has to close games for this team. Like, I understand. In the lineup I pitched was you're either taking Jonas off in crunch time or you're taking CJ off in crunch time, which I think realistically, like CJ, like Willie Green's never going to bench CJ. Like that guy's just going to play.
Shouldn't do that. I disagree with you on that for what it's worth, but yeah.
Maybe that's a long-term thing. Maybe that's like 2 years from now or a year from now. But for now, you take Jonas off and you put Trey in there, and your lineup is CJ, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. I mean, I think, especially if Trey takes that step defensively. I mean, the dude's like 6'10" now, and monster wingspan, huge athlete. He has like the same measurables as John Collins, and so I think it does involve Zion taking another step up defensively, being more engaged as a weak side defender, especially as drives come to the rim, and being more willing to attack the defensive glass. Historically, and as an NBA player, Zion's not been a fantastic defensive rebounder. There's got to be more of that for small ball units with him at center, quote unquote, to survive. And
that's part of what makes this team so fun, right? Like, we haven't even mentioned like Larry Nance being able to close games and be like a smaller center that can close games depending on what the lineup is, right? Obviously, Trey Murphy.
That's who they have pegged right now. Like that's the buzz out of camp is like Larry Nance is their backup center, and that's probably who they're going to close games with.
I think Larry Nance is great, by the way. Like, I'm an enormous fan of Larry.
Huge fan of Larry.
There's just a lot of different ways that they can do things. Like, Jackson Hayes was like sneaky okay for stretches last year. I was like very worried about Jackson Hayes.
Put him at the 4, and they rattled off enough wins to make them play in. Like, those lineups were positive. They did not lose those minutes.
Yeah, no, like I was worried about Jackson Hayes being an NBA player, like coming into last year. And by the end of the year, he was a starter on a playoff team. So like Jackson Hayes is what, the 9th or 10th man on this team? Like something like that now?
And Devontae Graham is right there with him, 9.
Yeah, and then you have like Dyson Daniels, who looks really like ready this preseason. Like, he looks like he's going to be able to play minutes.
He probably does not crack the rotation until someone gets hurt or traded.
Right. So like the number of different ways that this team can match up with you, it can go super big with Jonas. It can go big and mobile with Larry. It can go small with Zion at the 5. It can go honestly like super small and skilled with Zion at the 5 and Brandon Ingram at the 4 if you wanted to, and then bring in perimeter players. Like it's the different ways they can match up with teams.
Yeah.
The different ways that they can match up.
We didn't even talk about Jose.
Yeah, and he's like a useful backup point guard, right? Like it's the different ways they can match up with teams, I think, is what makes them such a difficult problem to solve on a night-to-night basis. When again, you're not like, trying to come up with different exact, you have tendencies for players, and obviously these guys, veterans, have played for a long enough time to know tendencies for guys, right? But like, you're not coming in with like a set game plan. This is how we're going to attack this. We're going to run our stuff. We're going to make it work. But because they have different lineup flexibilities, it's going to create a lot of problems for opposing teams. I said that I thought that the over-under for the Pelicans, what is it? It's like 45 and a half, something like
44 and a half or something like that. It's pretty low.
44 and a half. I think they win 50. That's where I'm at. I've like completely come around on this Pelicans team. Yeah, I think I was very wrong. Robbie like convinced me. Robbie was all in on the over at the time, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't know how this is going to operate. But the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, I think this is a 50-win team. I just think that they have so many different ways that they can present problems for opposing teams. Like, I think this is a better team than Dallas. I think this is a better team than like, a couple of the teams that finished above them last year. I don't know if they're better than Phoenix necessarily, but like, yeah.
I had them in that pack with this year. I had them in that pack with Phoenix and Memphis, mostly because I thought Memphis would take a step back, Phoenix takes a step back, and then I have Minnesota in that same pack. Like, I think like the front runners for me in the Western Conference are the Clippers, Nuggets, and I'll put the Warriors in there, because of what they accomplished. And I could hear an argument either way that Warriors should be higher, lower, whatever. But okay, let's pencil those 3 teams in there. And I think there's a next pack, which will include the Suns, the Grizzlies, and I'm putting the Pelicans in there and the Wolves in there, and that rounds out my top 5, top 6. That rounds out. Is that 6 or 7? Whatever, dude. It rounds out
7,
my tiers, and then everything else is the play-in tier, which is you're looking at the other LA team, you're looking at the Kings, you're looking at whatever the Blazers are trying to be. The Mavs, actually, completely forgot about them. Like, I think the Mavs could be a 7th or 8th seed this year, despite everything. So.
Yeah, the Mavs have Luka Doncic, who is like rightfully the favorite to win MVP right now. Maybe not rightfully, but like you can make a case for him as the favorite for MVP right now. And that team, I would also have them 7th, I think, in the West coming into this year, because I would also have, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves. That's 4. I would have the Pelicans ahead of them. That's 5. I would have the Grizzlies ahead. That's 6. I think I would. Oh, and Phoenix. Like, what am I doing? I think I have Dallas 8th, to be honest, which is just crazy. I feel like, the West is such a gauntlet this year. It's just going to be like, this is what the play-in tournament was made for. Like, this year's Western Conference, where there are 11 teams vying for 10 of these spots. They're going to want home court advantage, so everyone's going to play longer and play more, like, substantially throughout the course of the season. They don't want to live in the play-in tournament. This is just going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible to watch the West.
It never shakes out like this, right? It's always one team that either catches fire, and then there's like always another team that just is completely like hit with injuries, and you're just like, yeah, well, they were going to be good, but can't do anything about it. And so there's got to,
and it'll happen, right? Like, that'll happen at some point.
Yeah.
But no, I am so ready for this. Shamit, this was a great way to preview the season. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yes, sir. You can find me at Fear the Brown on Twitter. That is my Twitter handle. I have a podcast with Mason Ginsberg called In the Know, which is spelled N-O. And it is about Pelicans basketball. We just put out an episode this morning, actually this afternoon, and you can catch it on YouTube or Boot Crew Media, which is where all my work is found these days.
Go follow Shamit. He does great work. We will have him on again very soon. I very much enjoyed this. We will not go 5 months or whatever we did this time without having him on, because this is very, very enjoyable to talk to him as always. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe, do everything you can to support the show. We will be back later on, probably on Monday at this point, Sunday night, Monday morning, for the folks. Until next time, though, we'll talk soon.